Good morning, this is Ted with Foxhole Homes, and we're here at Fiddler's Green working on our first build. Today what we're going to be talking about is gray water treatment systems. And so basically there's two types of wastewater that come out of a house, gray water and black water. Gray water is stuff that basically comes out of your sinks and showers and washing machines. And gray water, there's nothing really toxic in it. For the most part, there's nothing that we'd have to be worried about. There's not any, bacteria and that kind of thing that can make us sick. So we can use gray water to grow food. We can use gray water and kind of repurpose that. And so what we're going to be doing today is building a system that will take the water out of our shower, the water out of our sink, and turn that into food, so that we're using that. Now, so we've got gray water and black water. So gray water is showers and sinks. And black water, another way to think about black water is anything that's going to have particles of stuff in it. So what might have particles of stuff in it in your house? Toilet, right? So toilet's the main one. Toilet's the main one. So do we want to be growing food with water out of the toilet? Yeah, not so much, right? Not so much. If you're watering trees with that and it's being filtered through the woody stem of a tree, that might be okay, right? But we'll even leave that one alone for purposes of what we're talking about today. What else might have particles in it? How about your kitchen sink? Any particles to go down the kitchen sink? Yeah, little food scraps and stuff when you're doing dishes. So sometimes, and it depends on, codes are different in different places, but sometimes they consider the water that comes down the kitchen sink black water. And it does have some of those food particles and stuff in it. And so if you don't take care of that well, that can smell and have some odor to it and that kind of thing. So we want to have a plan to deal with that as well. So I'm going to walk through real quick our plan for dealing with our gray water and the water that comes out of the kitchen sink, which is kind of grayish water, right? Because it does have some particles in it along the way. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to dig a pit, right? And it's going to start at about 2 feet deep on this side. And then the water that comes from the house is going to drain into that pit. I'm going to draw this bigger so you can show up, right? So draw my pit, right? So my pit is going to be about 2 feet deep at the shallowest part, and then it's going to go downhill from there, right? Does anybody know what kind of slope you need for plumbing drainage? Anybody know that number? Right? It's 1/4 inch per foot, right? 1/4 inch per foot that you want that to drop. So we want this getting deeper as it goes down. And so as the water flows in, all right, I'm going to do it generic first, and then we're going to talk about something else. I want it to, this bed, this garden bed, I want it to be able to absorb a bunch of water very quickly, right? So that if you're draining the sink, you're draining a bathtub, which we don't have a bathtub here, it'll just be a shower. But if we've got a lot of water draining quickly, we want it to be able to absorb that. And so we're going to use, we're going to have a pipe that kind of comes down there. It's going to have all kinds of holes in it, right? For that to come in, and I'm going to put big rocks around that. I'm going to put big rocks around this so that, like, rocks that are about 4 inches. And that's going to allow that volume of water to come in. Over the top of that, I'm going to put a little rubber skirt around it so that stuff doesn't fill in around that and fill up those voids. But then through the rest, and then I'm going to do a similar thing on this other end. I'm going to have some big rocks with another pipe sticking out the top that I can use to pump the water back in a circle. And so you're going to have these, what we call rock bulbs, with large stones to create the volume to deal with transferring the water. Then I'm going to have layers in the rest of the bed. I'm going to have layers in the rest of the bed. At the bottom is going to be about 1 foot of gravel. You guys are standing on it right now, right? about a foot of gravel will be in the bottom. That'll allow water to flow through. And then on top of that, we're going to have a layer of sand, right? That'll be, 4 to 6 inches of sand on top of the gravel. And then from there up, I'm going to have the best soil that I can get, right? Almost like potting soil. Anybody know the difference between soil and dirt? What? Nutrients? Yeah, right. Organic matter, right? So there's nutrients in the sand as far as like minerals, right? And that's a nutrient, but dirt is by itself doesn't have any organic matter in it that can decompose, right? It's just mineral. Dirt is mineral, where soil has organic matter in it. So I want the organic content in my soil here to be as high as I can get. So what we'll probably use in the top of ours is primarily just compost. Actually, I mean, we might have a little, dirt and mineral soil in there with it as well, but it's going to be as much organic matter as we can so that it will, as the water is down here, so that as soon as some roots tap down into the water flowing through the bottom of this, that organic matter will wick that water up and pull it up and bring it up to the roots of the plants. Does that make sense? Right? Now, on this other end, if I just let that water sit there, what happens when water sits for a long time? Stagnates. How's that smell? Yeah, not so hot, right? So part of the system is, in this other side, we'll have a pump that will recirculate the water, and it'll simply keep it flowing through the system. To keep it flowing, it oxygenates it and aerates it, and that does a lot to treat the water and help it get healthy and break down that bacteria and that kind of thing. So we'll keep that water recirculating from one side of the bed to the other in order to have that work. And then in the system, we will also have, let's say that this is the level of the floor, right? Let's say that's the level of the floor. So that below the level of the floor, at some point, we will create an overflow that will go outside of the house to a garden bed elsewhere. And so we want to have a way so that doesn't accidentally overflow into the rest of the greenhouse in the house. Now, can I just dig a pit and put all this stuff in there and have that work like that? No, right? I've got to have something to line it. And so what we're using is a rubber pond liner called EPDM. A lot of the pond liners that you get are PVC, right? And those aren't flexible. This stuff, super durable, but it's flexible. And what this allows me to do is, as long as the edges of my stuff are smooth and there's not any, sticks sticking out of that, it allows it to bend and flex and mold a little bit, but it also allows me to create watertight seals in between this and the pipes that I have coming in and out of it. So I can have a drain coming out of the bottom of this that's actually below the water line, but still won't leak. And the way that we do that is with this little tool right here, which is simply a piece of pipe that's been filed down so that this edge is sharp. And I use that like a punch, right? So I'll just put a board under the piece of EPDM and I can punch a hole in it. And with a hole this big, I can put a 2-inch drain pipe through there and then just simply put a gasket or a hose clamp around that and seal it up into place. And that allows me to have water flow from one bed to another, because in this one, we're actually going to have multiple beds. In this space, we'll have 2 different beds, and as the water recirculates through, it'll flow from one to the next in the process as we get going. Now, we were talking about the stuff from the kitchen sink, which is kind of gray water, kind of black water. Not really dangerous, but we want to have a way to deal with that. Anybody know of anything in nature that likes to eat up kind of garbage like that? Anybody take a stab at it? What? Anybody like to fish? Worms, right? Worms love food waste and decomposing stuff. So the water that comes out of the kitchen sink, we will actually create a worm bin with all kinds of little holes in the bottom of it that the waste out of the kitchen sink will come into first. And one of the simplest ways to do this is simply with a tote, right? So we'll take this tote, we'll drill a bunch of little holes in the bottom of it, create an inlet hole into it that's just big enough for the pipe to come in, and it'll allow that to, just big enough for the pipe to come in, and it'll sit in there. And then we've got, you know, the lid on the top of it that will snap shut on this one, and that will allow us to have the kitchen waste come in here, but the worms will take care of those food particles, so those food particles aren't getting into the rest of my system and kind of stinking it up, right? So that's what we're going to be doing today. And I'm really glad our volunteers are here, because we've got a lot of work to do for digging holes and making this stuff go around. A lot of work going on. We're hopefully within this month, or right at the end of this month, we'll be able to wrap up this build. Our target is January 2nd, which would be 3 months to the day from when we started, which is pretty impressive. I mean, it's a small house, yes, but for all volunteers to get a house built that will take care of a veteran for the long term in that short amount of time and with a small amount of money that we spent on it is really exciting. So thank you guys for coming out today. Let's get to work.